In the sky, gazing far into the night, I raise my hand to the fire, but it's no use, 'cause you can't stop it from shining through. It's true, baby, let the light shine through. If you believe it's true, baby, won't you let the light shine through for you. In the sky, gazing far into the night, I raise my hand to the fire, but it's no use, 'cause you can't stop it from shining through. It's true, baby, let the light shine through. If you believe it's true, baby, won't you let the light shine through for you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of the Elite FPL podcast. It is Friday night. It is game week 3. Are you excited, Steve-O?
I am indeed. I'm more excited about looking over the Cash Mini League rivals teams.
Absolutely. I'm just going to read out a few things. Shout a few of you guys out in chat. I've been waiting. Got Vish in chat. Block FPL's there too. Hey, Block, how you doing? Steiny Sign, Matt D, Daily Llama's here. A few of you guys done your wild cards. Greasy Trumpet. Hope they pay off. Matt D. Amanda Dillon's in chat. Nasty Balls. We've got some talk. We got some talking points in the Cash League. I'm telling you now. FPL Penguin. We've got Ray Joyce, we've got Anurag in chat, we've got Lawrence Gurr in chat, Peter Shuka, Sultan Saeed, Dilly B, TD. We've got, hey Dale, how you doing? Simon Andreasen, we've got Ad Whitfield, we've got Matt Brunton, also known as Midget Neck in chat. We've got, who else we got? Plenty of you guys. We've got Simon Andreasen, Phil Potter, Ray Joyce, Resi Desi 11, also known as Adam. We've got Asraf in chat. Hello guys, how you doing? FPL Alex the Kid. I'm going top to bottom now, so missing out on some people here, I'm sure. Zulu Ninja's in chat. The guy I said had the perfect wild card midweek, and Pookie likened to, and maybe even better than Lewandowski. Oh, that's big shoes to fill, my friend. I don't know yet. I don't know about that yet. But yeah, welcome everybody. To a Friday night podcast where we're going to look over at the mini league and talk about obviously the Everton, the Aston Villa Everton game is going on now, and the big news is for a lot of you managers that own him, Tyrone Mings injured in the warm up, it seems. So for all 2% of you FPL managers, I'm sure you're going to be absolutely gutted about that, and hopefully that makes Dinya's chances a bit higher. Steve-O, do you want to tell us about the team news in the Aston Villa?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I'm not going to read it all out because everybody seems to know pretty much what the teams are anyway. But interestingly for me though, Gilbert starts for Aston Villa.
You said that.
He's been given the opportunity. Dean Smith has come out and basically just said that he's been training really hard at the moment. He did really well in pre-season. He's just given his opportunity. So, knowing my luck, he's second on my bench, so he will probably go and get an assist tonight.
I just want to say sorry to the people. Sorry, Steve, for cutting in, but apparently he is playing. Last I heard, he was not playing, but the guys in chat are saying he is playing. So, okay, so it looks like he's playing. There we go.
So yeah, the teams in full then is Heaton, Taylor, Mings, Engels, Gilbert, McGinn, David Luiz, Grealish, Trezeguet, Wesley and Jota. And then for Everton, it's as you would expect, Pickford, Digne, Mina, Keane, Coleman, Andre Gomez, Schneiderlin, Bernard. Oh, Schneiderlin's back, right? Okay. Bernard, Sigurdsson, Richarlison and Calvert-Lewin. No start for Keane again. Wow. Okay.
Disappointing for the Moise Keane owners, definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, Jason, for everybody just to know, me and Jason I decided I wanted to do not quite spontaneous, but I just wanted to do a live reaction to our Cash Mini League teams. And I asked Jason if he wanted to do it, and he said, yes, we just want to do this for a quick hour, get a few people on to chat about how they think they're going to do this game week. And let's react live, Jason. I think straight away, let's go to Top Spot. But we also want to go over a few people who did their wild cards as well.
Let's just get the drama out of the way, shall we?
Okay. Oh yeah, you said go for it, Jason. This is news to me. And by the way, just before I just want to quickly cut in. I did put out a tweet that if we hit 2,000 subscribers within this hour, so we've only got 22 subscribers to get between now and 9 o'clock, I will take a couple of shots. Just to say thank you of vodka, but so get people knowing that we're live, get people subscribing. If you are watching this live right now and you haven't subscribed, just hit the subscribe button. If we hit 2,000 tonight, within the next hour, I will take a couple of shots of vodka. Jason, you got some breaking news. Let's go.
Breaking news: Ian Rose, Team Valhalla, currently top of the Elite FPL Challenge League.
Oh no, he hasn't used another chip.
He's done a third chip.
Oh my god! Right, I'm gonna have to look at this.
He is triple captained.
Oh my goodness!
But who is it? He's triple captained Mane. Brave, but I mean, I tell you now, if you're gonna triple captain someone, it can't be Salah or Sterling this game week. You've got to do someone like Mane. one that's not going to be many, not many people are going to be captaining him. And if it pays off, man, he could be shooting ahead. So I'm happy that he's used his triple captainship, but I'm also very concerned that if Mane scores well against Arsenal, that I've got some catching up to do.
Yeah, he did one transfer this week. Looking at this, he did. He's done a what? Huh? I don't understand this transfer history. It's doing it from the. That's weird.
Yeah,
the transfer page has changed. It's not top to bottom now. It's going from bottom to top. Okay, fair enough.
Lundstrom. He did out. Maitland-Niles out. Lundstrom
in.
Lundstrom. Yeah.
Have we got a bit of the price player team here, Jason? Do you reckon?
I don't know. I think so. I mean, if he scores well this week, then he's going to shoot. Well, he's going to be top, but he's also going to have no chips. So I'm not too worried.
Oh, and just straight away. So just for people listening on audio, we got Tommy.
He's got Moise Keane, by the way.
Yeah, Lundstrom, Alexander-Arnold, Digne, Zinchenko, De Bruyne, Mane, triple captain, Sterling, Lanzini, Martial, and then Moise Keane up front. And if he doesn't play, well, he will. He'll play the last 15, 20 minutes like he's been doing in each of the games. So, good luck with it, is what I say. Good luck with your triple
different, captain. And I mean, it's different. I don't think it's a strong team, especially with. I mean, I don't like Lanzini. I don't like Moise Keane. He's playing Lundstrom home to Leicester. Could do something, but I wouldn't be too confident about that. And yeah, I mean, it doesn't really fill me with too much confidence, that team going forward. So, I mean, Ian, if you're watching or you watch us back on the replay, best of luck to you, buddy. Best of luck. You are top of the cash league, and hopefully this triple captain Mane will, for your sake, will do you well. But if it doesn't, then I'll be rubbing my hands together. Keep us updated on the score, by the way, guys.
Yeah, I've just seen the second place team show me the Mane.
Yes.
And I'm just shocked at his transfer that he's done. Very peculiar. He's done Lamella to Bernard.
Oh, yes. Yeah, I think he was in Discord earlier on talking about this.
Why?
I think because Bernard scored last week. That one only goal, I think he's just knee-jerked him in.
But Bernard, my understanding is he's a centre defensive midfielder, or was certainly a centre midfielder for Everton.
He's a midfielder, but I mean, it's just completely out there, isn't it? He's selected by 2.3% of the FPL community. I certainly wouldn't even have him. He's not even on my radar, not even a blip in the far distance of the horizon of my radar. So I would say that he's a winger. He's not a CDM. Okay. To me, Bernard is a surprise move. I would have kept the Lamella.
Yeah, for people listening audio, his team in full, it's Ryan, Wan-Bissaka, Maguire, Robertson, and then McGinn, Salah, De Bruyne, Sterling, captain Bernard, and then Mopai and Pookie up front. So I suppose moving on to third spot, which
I'm not that concerned right now. The people that are above me.
No, I agree. This is my point. Like all this last week has been like quite a bit of a. God, why have I done this for? Why have I done that for? And then it's game week 3, and like you said, I'm not really fussed. I'm just glad I'm playing my own game and just getting on with it. It's a hardcore Elite FPL fan. It's our man Dylan. He's taken a -4 straight away. Let's see exactly which 2 transfers he's done here for this -4. This will be interesting because, of course, he's got rid of Perez and Wilson and brought in Son and Jota. Of course, Jota, the player that can't seem to score in the Premier League, but can do in well, I don't know about Jota. He can't seem to score in the Premier League. He just seems to do it in Europe. But I would have probably. Let's just look at his team. I haven't actually seen what his team looks like, to be honest with you. Is it a 3-4-3? No.
It's a 4-4-2.
4-4-2, right? Okay. So for people listening in audio, we've got Ryan in goal, Van Dijk, Zinchenko, Digne, Lundstrom, Salah, Sterling, captain, Son, De Bruyne, Pookie, and Jota. It's a nice team. Like you said, there's nothing wrong with that.
I'm calling it now. There's going to be some switches in the Challenge League table by the end of this weekend, almost guaranteed.
Would you have got for a -4? Bearing in mind, would you have got rid of Wilson for Jota, or has he done this to free up funds to bring in Son?
He's done it to free up funds.
Right.
I don't know. Son, at the beginning of the season, I would always plan to bring Son in, ironically. But now I'm actually not looking to bring any Tottenham into my team. But I will keep an eye on Son.
So on to 4th place, and we've got a wildcarder. We have a wildcarder in 4th spot.
I am not scared right now of being 5th in this Cash League at all.
It's Marlon Moore, his wildcard in full. Tom Heaton, Wan-Bissaka, Zinchenko, Van Dijk, Digne, Lamella, De Bruyne, Sterling, Salah, captain, Mason Mount, and Pukki. He's benched Ashley Barnes. He's got Lundstrom and Greenwood on the bench. Wow. Your thoughts to that, Jason, straight away, this 4-5-1?
I think it's a decent team. It's a decent team. I mean, Mason Mount, I mean, there's always that question mark on him. He's still early in the season. We don't know how prolific he's going to be for Chelsea. He's looking quite lively. He is looking one of their best attacking players at the moment. Still very, very early for me to make a decision on him. And I personally would be playing Barnes over Mount. I just, that's my opinion anyway. But it's a strong bench. It's a very, when I say it's Lundstrom and Barnes on the bench, very strong. You're probably not going to need to have them sub on. So unless Lamella doesn't play, then Barnes comes on. That could be a possibility. But yeah, it's a solid. It's a decent team. It's going to do all right. And he's gone with the Salah captain, so it's a different captain pick to me. So I'm actually at the moment Friday night, 8:15 almost in the evening. I'm super relaxed right now. I am super relaxed. In fact, I probably need to get a hammock, I think, installed in this room. Because I'm chilling right now. I'm absolutely chilling. I've got all my chips. I'm sitting in 5th, and these guys are only a few points ahead of me, and they've used and they've used 2, 3, in some cases 3 chips, and I'm thinking, wow, this 35 more game weeks yet, my friends, and you're really going to miss out. But anyway.
Not only that, there's a lot of -4s, and when it comes to me, in effect, I've only then gone -4. So, for example, I'm actually now only 4 points behind you because you took a -4, and there's quite a lot of players that have taken hits. So, like G Wiz is another example, taken hits, and in reality, like with a lot like Vince Chapman, that -4 really is nothing. No, the -8 is really nothing compared to others. I've seen a couple of Kane captainers, John Harris, Charlie, aka Chicken Tikka Mo Salah. He's gone with Harry Kane as well as a captain. It's predominantly looking like Sterling captain from most people. I think we've got to look at FPL Boona wildcard team. I think Jason. I think he's a 70-something in the world. 70.
Well, it might as well be in the world. But
definitely on the second
wild card. I've got it. Pope in goal, Wan-Bissaka, Zinchenko, Walker Peters. He went with he was saying he was thinking about doing this. He came on, he kind of announced his squad. It's the same squad. It's the same squad as what he announced. And I'm going to say right now, I am put off with the Walker Peters choice in the Kane. I just wouldn't be bringing Walker Peters in. The Cantwell pick is interesting, but he's already got Pukki. I think that's one too many Norwich players in my team.
Yeah.
Obviously he's gone with the Mane pick over Salah because obviously for free up money. I know Bruno, you're going to hate me for saying it, but I think you've kind of wasted your wild card. I really do, and I'm waiting for you to come on, man, and I want you to come on and say, Jay, how many points do you get? Oh, I got 50 points. And how many points did I get? It's 58. I got 83 points. I'm like, I want you to come on and absolutely have a stormer of a game week, but I just have a feeling that you've just wasted it, my friend. I think you panicked. Game week 3, you've panicked.
Mm. Just a place below is a Block FPL friend of the show. He's made 3 transfers. He's taken a hit. It's a 4-point hit. He's got rid of Robertson, Wilson.
Who's this? Sorry.
A Block FPL.
Oh yeah.
He's 79. He got rid of Wilson, Robertson, and Fraser, and brought in Harry Kane, Wan-Bissaka, and McGinn. What are your thoughts on his team there, Jason? Going with a 4-5-1 formation for people listening in audio. In total, it's Edison in goal, Alexander-Arnold, Wan-Bissaka, Zinchenko, Digne, Dendoncker, Salah, Sterling captain, McGinn, Perez, and then Harry Kane up front.
So what was the transfers you did? Sorry.
Kane in, McGinn in, and Wan-Bissaka in for Fraser, Wilson, and Robertson. For a -4.
I like it.
I think.
I like
I agree.
those are strong. That's a strong transfer. Positive transfer. Only spent 4 points doing it as well. I think that's very good. I mean, he's playing Dendoncker. That to me, that's a waste. That's the waste of a playing position there. I know why he's had to do it, but do you know what? Do you know what I would have done? I would have actually started Greenwood. I would have started Greenwood over Dendoncker because I tell you what, if Greenwood only plays 20, 30 minutes in that game, I wouldn't put him past it to get a goal. And I would rather do that than have Dendoncker with 2, 3 points sitting there. I mean, I don't know.
If we go to before we go and look at the chat and everything, if you go to virtually the bottom of the Challenge League, it's Statman, Kev Huntley. He's used his wild card, and I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on his wild card team. He's gone with a 4-4-2 formation. For people listening on audio, it's Heaton in goal, Wan-Bissaka, Digne, Montoya, Lundstrom, De Bruyne, Mane, Sterling captain, Martial, Harry Kane, Pookie up top.
I'm telling you now, guys, this Lundstrom train is about to be derailed. This Lundstrom love is going to be soon forgotten. Pookie, on the other hand, the party's still only just started for Pookie, but Lundstrom, I haven't got him in. I'm not bitter. I'm not bitter.
Well, Kev is actually watching live. I'm sure he's willing to come live on air. He just said that he's looking at the rotation of Kelly and Cantwell for Lundstrom and Montoya.
I like the look of Cantwell in your team for the likes of Dendoncker, but I don't know how many games I'll be wanting to play both of Cantwell and Pookie in the same team. I mean, it's looking at a team. It's a solid team. Starting Lundstrom at home to Leicester. I don't know.
Do you know what, Jason?
Yeah.
Let's get Statman on. Let's get Kev on. He's live in the waiting room.
Come on. He's chomping at the bit to just to tell us what he thinks about our assessment of his team. Hello, Statman. How you doing? Oh, hello. It would help if I joined it actually. Hello, Statman. How you doing? Welcome. You're on air.
Yo, lads, how's it going?
Yeah, good. Great. Just breaking down your wild card, Mr. Statman. Obviously, you're trying to climb up a few positions in the cash league, and I've gone with a Kane pick, double Norwich. Obviously, not playing Cantwell this week. You chose to play Lundstrom, and you've got Montoya in. So, are you are you a little bit worried that all that money in Kane, that you've obviously had to downgrade Mane to fit in certain players and downgrade to Mane? Or do you think Mane is the better pick between Salah and Mane?
For that wild card, it worked perfectly. Everyone's talking about Mane outscoring Salah this calendar year, which the proof's in the pudding there. But also, I wanted some Spurs cover for them fixtures. If you look at the next 8 fixtures for Spurs, they're really good. And I did have another option to have Son in and have Rashford up front and Salah. I could have had Salah, but I just looked at Kane's record in September, and September's normally when he goes ham. Like he does really well in September. So combine them with the fixtures coming up, Son coming back, I'm pretty happy to have Kane in there. And the midfield's pretty strong. But if you look at the rotation with Montoya and Lundstrom over the next 3 weeks, I can't remember it off the top of my head, but literally swapping them two for Cantwell and Kelly.
Well, Man City away in game week 4. Man City away game week 4 for Montoya, and then game week 4 you got West Ham away for Cantwell. So is that what you're talking about?
Yeah. And
Yeah. So you can rotate them out. Yeah. So the red fixtures. Red fixtures game week 4, 6, and 7, and Kelly is currently looking at Aston Villa at home, Wolves at home, Norwich at home, game week 6, 7. Yeah, I mean there is rotation now. I understand why you've done that. So some people like to do what you've done.
Well, we got to go. Aston Villa have just scored.
Aston
Villa have just scored.
Please, Joe. Please
don't tell us it's Wesley.
Please don't tell me.
Steve will tell us it's not Wesley.
It better not be, because I'm going to pick this laptop up and it's out that door over there.
This can't be happening, really. It really.
Obviously, people in chat will be able to let us know
Please,
exactly
VAR.
who scored.
Please, VAR, save us.
It is a Wesley. Well,
no, it's Wesley.
People are saying no Wesley. People are saying Wesley scored. It is Wesley.
Oh my God!
That is fun. I told you. I told you this will happen. If any transfers I do, it always
Jota
backfires.
assist.
Oh really?
Oh.
Well.
When I'm talking to you, Steve, at the time.
It's okay.
The goal, I'm talking to you. Jesus.
It's okay, because then you can still get a goal and an assist to make up for it. That's ridiculous. That's ridiculous. The game week that Steve-O transferred, you stuck with him for 2 game weeks. You transfer him out, and he gets a goal.
Yeah, but
always the way, innit?
The two games in which you thought he may actually do something, he does nothing. In the one game where you think actually, Everton have kept a clean sheet in about 50 games in a row, and they go and concede against Aston Villa. It's typical, isn't it? But whatever, there's nothing you can do about it. And I even said this yesterday. I said this would happen. I said that tonight Sigurdsson's probably going to get a goal and assist. I said Wesley's probably going to score. Pukki's going to do nothing. Ashley Barnes is going to do nothing. Kevin De Bruyne is going to do absolutely nothing tomorrow. So yeah, it's all going to happen. I know it is. So the -8 was a complete waste. But like I said, I'm happy with the team, and that's the key. I'm happy with it.
Yeah.
And more importantly, Kev, are you happy with your team?
Yeah, Kev.
Well, now Wesley scored. I hope he doesn't get 2 or even another assist or something. Because I backed Wesley from the start. That would be heartbreaking, because I only jumped on the Pukki bandwagon, because to cover.
Wait a minute, Statman. Have you got wildcard remorse already? 23 minutes into the game week. Well, into the game.
Well, no, I'm not. But I do expect him to look at some stage go on a little run, because he does look a decent player. But I am confident with my team, and I've got all the big hitters I wanted, and I'm even that Wesley goal.
I think that there's going to be a lot of people come Sunday evening that are going to be very, very disappointed that have played their wildcards, and players that they've taken out in their wildcard have scored more than the players that they've brought in. There we go. Just sit back and have a think about that, and while I'm at it, I'm actually going to just have an ice cream.
Talking of ice cream and eating or drinking things, like I said, if we hit 2,000 subscribers tonight, I will be having a couple of celebratory shots of vodka. So make sure you hit that subscribe button if you haven't, if you enjoy what you're watching. Also, importantly, if you want to support the show, just simply hit that like button right now, and that will just basically help us out regarding all things Elite FPL moving forward with everything. If you want to join us on the Discord, just like Statman is now, to talk about your team, about how you're feeling about game week 3, now your teams are all confirmed and everything, by all means do. We're only going to be on for a further 35 minutes. So jump in the Discord, talk to me and Jason about your team moving forward, what you've done this particular game week, and have you already got some transfers in mind? Is Wesley already potentially? It's ridiculous, isn't it? But Statman, talk us through why you've gone with Mane instead of Salah.
Just the stats, just how good he's looked to the eye in the few games he's been back, and and the extra million helped a lot. Like I say, there was an option to go Salah, Son, and Rashford, and I just thought that Mane, Martial, and Kane overall would bank more points. Like, I always look at it as a block of transfers, not just 1v1. Like, I've got to consider where the extra million is going to go, and just be a bit of a geek and try and, premeditate, figure out how many points they're going to get as a whole. So let's hope. I know Salah's got a great record against Arsenal. That's a bit of fear factor. But what can you do? You can't, like you say, you can't have them all.
Yeah, I'm just looking at 8th place. Mika Haju. They've played their wild card. And to read it out for everybody again, Jason, I'm sure, is just going to be thinking, I'm glad I'm not in that boat of wildcarders. He's gone with Pope, Alexander-Arnold, Emerson, Digne, Montoya, De Bruyne, Mane, Sterling captain, Martial, Pukki, and Allaire up front. And he's got Ceballos on the bench, along with Lundstrom and Greenwood. I mean, straight away, I've seen a couple of people with this loving for Emerson. Have you got any thoughts, Statman, on Emerson?
Yeah. As soon as Chelsea start keeping a few clean sheets, he'll probably come into mind. He looks so attacking. Even in that game where they got routed by Man U, like 3 shots on target, he hit the bar. Like, I don't know if he's ever looked so attacking. So while Chelsea aren't getting clean sheets, he's not an option, because for me it's bread and butter first. But if Chelsea shore up that defence, I think he's a great choice, yeah.
While we've got you on air, your thoughts on Sunday evening or afternoon's game between your boys Newcastle away at Tottenham? Are you confident? Well, not from your point of view, but do you think that Kane is going to do well? And do you think Kane captainers are going to be in for a bit of a double point haul?
I honestly don't. I don't think that Spurs will do much against you. Maybe a 2-0 or something. I was listening to the predictions, and I'm not sure if the history or one of you picked 2-0, but I think like a narrow-ish win. But it's just going forward why I've got Kane in. But no, I don't expect Spurs to drum Newcastle. I think Newcastle are due a hearty performance where, it was embarrassing against Norwich, and Arsenal, okay, it wasn't too bad, but 2-0, Steve-O, I think, and hopefully Kane gets one of them or some of it.
I'm just looking at 11th spot, Jonathan Hardiman. Okay. We've got another wild card, Jason, but I think this is a wild card that you'd basically say that, yeah, I think you've brought the right players in there. For people listening on audio, we've got Nick Pope in goal, Wan-Bissaka, Kyle Walker, Digne, Martial, Sterling captain, Ceballos, De Bruyne, Mane, then up front with Rashford and Pukki. Straight away, Jason, your thoughts while you're...
Very strong team.
Very,
very strong team. Yeah, it's good. I like the double up in Man United. I think that Crystal Palace fixture and the fixtures going forward are great for United. So
got regular contributor Nasty Balls has taken a wild card hit. He's 12th. Interesting. He's gone with a 4-3-3 formation. Interestingly. And here we go. For people in audio, it's different. Nasty Balls, we've had you on air before, I'm sure we have. I know you're a regular contributor to the show. By all means, jump in that Discord and talk us through your team. But we've got Nick Pope in goal. I'm enjoying the Burnley loving here. Montoya, Digne, Wan-Bissaka, however you pronounce his name, for Leicester. Then the 3-man midfielders, Sterling, Mane, Kevin De Bruyne. Sterling as captain. And then you've got Rashford, Pukki and Firmino up top with a lovely bench of Cantwell, Lundstrom and Dendoncker. Jason, your thoughts? The Firmino one and straight away sticks out for me.
I think yeah. I can see why he's taking a bit of a gamble on Firmino. I mean, there's a lot of the template players in there. I think with it seems a lot of people now who've played their wild card have moved from Salah to Mane, doesn't it? And they're the ones to watch, because Mane could easily outscore Salah this game versus Arsenal. And kudos if anyone, number one, should have captained him. I think that Soyuncu is a great shout. Yeah, it's a solid team. Solid team.
I've got some breaking news. My friend in Gilbert, after just 30 minutes, has already received a yellow card.
Oh no, he got it after 5 minutes, mate. I just didn't tell you. I didn't want to tell you.
Wow, that's amazing. Wow, he's really earned his spot in the team. I'd like to bring to your attention, how many leagues do you want to be in? 15th place. He's a regular on the show. It's FPL Defender, and I know he tweeted us about this at Elite FPL.
Oh
if you
my God, he's taken a 12-point hit.
Yep, a 12-point hit, and I'll tell you exactly who he's done. Even though he's revealed this all on Twitter.
Oh, he's got... Okay, yeah.
Yeah, let's reveal what he's done. So we're talking Aubameyang, Van Dijk, McGinn, Salah out for Kane, Bolly, Son, and De Bruyne. So straight away jumping on the Tottenham assets there. Kev, your thoughts on jumping on the Tottenham assets and thinking that Spurs are going to turn you over?
I think going Spurs over the next 2 months is pretty solid. I'm not sure about Bruno's Walker Peters pick, don't get us wrong, but the attacking assets should definitely return. Do we not think? The fixtures look so good. Even the Arsenal game next week, they normally score well against. So I'm all on the Spurs bandwagon. If Son
for a minus 12.
Oh
though?
yeah. Nah. Not for the minus 12. Nah.
No.
Apparently there was just been a block off the line. Calvert-Lewin off the line. Almost apparently McGinn's injured.
Oh right, okay.
Okay. We'll wait and see on that one. He may just be McGinn.
We've got a few people in the waiting room. Jason, it's completely up to who you want to bring in, basically.
Let's have a look then, shall we? Dino Bino. Don't know if I spoke to him before.
Yeah, we spoke to him. Yeah.
Dino Bino. You're live on air? Dino Bino, you there, buddy?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, I'm great, Dino. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad.
So are you how's your team looking?
Yeah, well, a wild carded.
Ooh. Are you in the Cash Mini League?
Yes, I am. I think you find me about second bottom. So.
All right. Okay. Fair enough. So you've wild carded. This will be interesting. What's your team name? Do you know?
What's the name?
Oh, is it Dosser SC? Are you Dean Lewis?
Yeah, Dosser SC.
Right. So
yeah,
84th, Jason. Right. So we've got the wild card played. Okay. For people listening on audio, we've got Nick Pope in goal, Wan-Bissaka, Lundstrom, Montoya. So. Okay, we've gone with cheap defenders, but there's a reasoning as to why. De Bruyne, Sterling, Mane, Martial, Kane captain, Barnes and Pookie, with a bench of Cantwell, Kelly and Rico.
It's almost
What's made you go with it?
It reminds me. Remember that chip, all out attack.
Mm.
with that Lundstrom pick, obviously Lundstrom playing attacking midfield. That's essentially an all out attack team there.
Yeah.
Just basically bargain basement defense and all out attack.
Yeah, why the 3-4-3?
Well, yeah, I did have 3-5-2. Last minute, this might bite me in the arse tomorrow, but last minute I did have Son in my team, but I took Son out for Kane, and I had De Gea in goal instead of Pope. But so that might come back to bite me in the arse. But I've just.
Who was going to be your third striker? Just a 4.5.
Yeah, I said a 4.5. Yeah, Martinelli of Arsenal.
What are your thoughts on that, Jason? Rather than having De Gea and Son, we've gone with Kane and Nick Pope instead.
I think I'd rather have Ryan and you got Montoya. Yeah, I think that I think you've made the right choice. You've already got Wan-Bissaka there. You're not going to double up on United defence just yet, and you've got Harry Kane at home to Newcastle, which you've captained. So I think that's the logical pick.
Don't get me wrong, it's a gamble. I've gone all out attack, but when I look at some of the teams, I don't think there's going to be a lot of clean sheets around the league. I think there's going to be a lot of goals.
I've just lost one right now.
Well, I'm watching the game. I did go mental when Wesley scored because I know a lot of people got Digne, so I was quite happy about that, to be honest.
Well, it'd be ironic, wouldn't it? I've got Digne over 6 million, and then obviously you've got Lundstrom at 4.1, and probably going to get probably the exact same points. So yeah, I mean it's one of those, isn't it? So
it's an attacking team, but at least I like this. I can flex down. If I start to see Liverpool defence get good again, I can always make a couple of moves and get double Liverpool defence and drop Kane if I want to. And because I'm happy with Barnes and Pookie, I think they're both going to do well this season, throughout the whole season.
Yeah.
So overall, then, Dino, you are very, very happy with your team. Or what would you personally feel your happiness wise if 10's being ecstatic, 1 being no, I'm not that happy at all? Where would you put yourself?
I would say 8 because the defence, I can see the problems there. Like, I'm gonna have to be a bit shrewd who I pick each week and maybe use my transfer each week potentially to swap someone in for a clean sheet for a 4.5 and take a gamble on. So it's going to be a bit of paying the 4.5 market, but overall, I say I'm an 8 overall.
Well, let's hope it pays off for you, and we'll have you back on tomorrow evening, Dino.
Guys,
cheers, lads.
Cheers, buddy. We're on 981 subs still, guys. Remember, Steve-O said if we reach the 2,000 mark in the stream, he'll take at least one shot of vodka. So just bear that in mind. If you're not subscribed already, hit that subscribe button and help us reach that 2,000 mark. This evening, this game week 3, exciting Aston Villa versus Everton. Literally.
Sounds like you've been drinking.
Yeah, literally, I just had an absolute mind blank. I mean, I'm so excited about the game. You can tell, can't you? I just want Digne to score.
Yeah, well, I mean,
save my game week. Save my game week.
I still, this will be ironic, Jason, that the one differential over you that I did have, I've got rid of. So the one thing that always haunted me last year, my differential's not actually doing anything on you. Tonight, the one time I actually got rid of him, you get the idea. It's a bit bad luck. But should we bring on Stein, Jason?
Yeah, bring him in. Let's go. Right, okay. Stein. Hello, Stein. You're live on the Elite FPL podcast. With Jason and Steve-O. How you doing today? How's it going, Mr. Stein? Can you hear me? Come on, Stein.
Come on, Stein, you know how it works. Unmute your mic. You've been on several thousand times beforehand.
There he is. I don't know what's going on. There we go. Stein, you've unmuted your mic. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Here we
go. I can hear you. I can hear you. Stein, how's it going?
Yeah, brilliant, actually. It's been up and down, really. I haven't had a brilliant first week. It was okay.
1 second, Stein. 1 second.
Extremely poor.
Sorry, Stein. We've Nasty Balls has donated kindly $4.99. He said, "Let's get Steve-O drunk and get subscribing, guys." So, yeah. Well, I mean, let's get that 2,000 mark. Let's get that 2,000 milestone out of the way, and let's get Steve-O drunk. I like the idea. One shot of vodka do it.
It is Friday, so
it is Friday. It is. Stein, sorry for cutting you off there, buddy. So talk us through your team game week 3. Whereabouts are you? Are you in the cash league? I can't remember now.
I am. I think I went from 87th to 83rd, or maybe from 89th to 87th.
Oh, really? All right. Okay. All right.
Yes.
What's the team name?
I posted my team in rate my team.
Is it Peckham Pumas?
That's it.
Yeah, there we are. It's 83rd, Jason.
There you go.
Right. Okay.
Peckham Pumas.
So you've made 2 transfers. What transfers were they, Stein?
They were Martial and Peters of Burnley.
Oh, in for who?
In for Fraser and Ake of Bournemouth.
Not yet. I like that. So the team in full for people on audio, it's Matt Ryan and Go, Alexander-Arnold, Peters, Coleman, and then we got Ceballos, Salah, Perez, Martial. At last, something different. De Bruyne, captain. You've got Harry Kane and Jamie Vardy. Stein, why have you gone with De Bruyne?
He's an assist king, isn't he? He's going to get, put it this way, if Man City are going to get more than 3 goals, Kevin De Bruyne is going to get more than 1 assist.
Well, Jason went with 5-0. I went with 6-0. Chicken Tikka Mo Salah Charlie went with 3-1. The history, unfortunately, is going with a very low scoring, tight 2-1 victory to see. What's your prediction on this game?
I think City will win 3-1. And in all honesty, I think this is the week De Bruyne scores. He assisted last week. I think he's going to have a crack from somewhere outside the penalty box. They're usually unstoppable if he does. It's certainly if they're on target.
So you weren't tempted by the Kane captaincy then?
No, not really, because Newcastle are desperate at this moment in time. They've lost everything, so I think they're going to be extremely defensive, kick the ball off the pitch as often as they can, and just to try and break Tottenham's play up. I'm not saying Harry Kane won't score. I'm just not convinced he's going to get the 3 or 4. I
think that I can't believe I'm going to say this now, because I've said multiple times. I even said it earlier on the stream. I'm not scared of Harry Kane, but if I had him in my team, I would give him the armband. At home to Newcastle, I would have given him the armband. I would have done it over De Bruyne. I think if he's in your team this particular game week with that particular fixture, I think it's too hard to ignore that captain, especially with the amount of people in our Cash Mini League that have not, I mean, you've gone with the differential captain of De Bruyne, but I just think Kane's going to, I don't know. I hope it works out for you. I really, really do. You're going to get the points from Kane anyway, so it's not the end of the world. But, yeah.
Got to say.
Exactly. And I looked at it this way. Let's just say Kane scores 13 points. Someone's going to get 26 as a captain.
Yeah.
I'm convinced this week that De Bruyne is going to get at least 10. I'm convinced he will.
Right.
And so there you go.
Well, and he's a bonus. He's a bonus point magnet as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's simply because virtually every ball he puts into the box usually finds a Man City player.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that's a pretty solid team. You obviously have thought those transfers through, and I think you're on for a very good point score this week. I really do, Stein. And I like the Vardy pick. I think it could be his time to get something against Sheffield United and silence all of those Lundstrom owners that have brought him into the starting lineup. And be a pleasure to have you on over the weekend and having you tell us all how you got on.
Well, I'll definitely be back to say it either fell flat or I'll be like singing.
Depends if you join us on the Saturday podcast or the Sunday surgery where we're dissecting.
Saturday, unfortunately, I've got to work.
Oh, that's right. Then we'll come on the Sunday surgery. Then it's not a problem. We'll look forward to having you on.
Yeah, and hopefully my team won't be dissected.
That's fine. It's fine. Thank you, Stein. Cheers, buddy.
No, thank you. Yeah, brilliant. Apparently the callers are a bit quiet, Jason. And if you want to turn the volume up a bit on them,
his volume was. I think it was just Stein. I was trying to get him louder, but I think he's
brilliant.
Just
Okay, that's cool. Let's bring on Ryan. I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Hello, Ryan. How you doing?
Hello.
There you go.
How are you?
Back to full volume again. How's it going, Ryan? How's it going?
Fine. And you?
Yeah, not too bad. How's your team shaping up for game week 3? Are you confident?
Actually, it's in the Kashmir League. I'm on 137 points, I think.
What position are you? Do you know?
48, I think.
Okay, one moment. Let's bring you up.
Yeah, 48th. Yeah, Scousers Scoregasms.
Yeah, there we go.
Oh, you've done a -4. So for people listening
nothing
on
wrong
audio,
with doing a -4.
No, there's nothing wrong with -4, but it's always interesting to see what they've done. So we got Matt Ryan, Zuma, Van Dijk, Zinchenko, Salah, Martial, Lamela, Perez, Sterling, Harry Kane, captain, Chris Wood. Who were your transfers, Ryan?
Moura, King, and Aubameyang for Martial, Wood, and Kane.
Oh, interesting. Why Chris Wood?
Actually, I was 0.1 short of getting Martial. That's why I choosing Chris Wood.
Ah, right, yeah. Your thoughts straight away on that, Jason, getting rid of the Bamiyang for Kane. I think these moves, Lucas Moura, King, and a Bamiyang to Kane, Wood, and Martial are very good.
I think they'll pay off. I mean, in taking a -4. It's the double Tottenham. I mean, it's a good fixture. I see why you've done it. Lamela and Kane. Let's hope Lamela gets some decent minutes. That he plays. He's been playing really well for Pochettino. So you'd hope that he will feature a large portion of that game. Chris Wood is just a bit of a filler. I think that I mean, the good thing is you haven't got Digne in, or Coleman. So you're not disheartened that Villa's scored. So yeah, you got Lundstrom on the bench where he should be, and I think that Kane is going to serve you well this week. I really do.
Yeah. I bought him -4 because I saw him as a different casual captain because many do not join him in the Kashmir League. I thought that was a real opportunity to climb in the rankings.
Well, I mean, definitely, it's a way of getting up the rankings, absolutely, and it's what a differential. Interesting stat from Alex A in chat.
Yeah.
28 managers, he believes, have wildcarded in the Challenge League, our cash league. In addition to the 11 managers that wildcarded last week, that's 39 out of 91 teams wildcarded already. 43% of the teams in the cash league have wildcarded. That's pretty crazy. That's mental. Well, it plays into our hands, doesn't it, Steve-O? Absolutely. So
how do you feel? How do you feel, Ryan, about the wild card? Have you actually used it?
Oh no.
So how do you feel about 43% of the league already? Have nearly 50% have used their wild card already? Does that breed confidence into you?
That's great because they are rivals.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And as a Liverpool fan, you see a lot of people on the wild card now taking Salah out for Mane, believing that Mane is the better player. Do you think Mane is the better player out of Salah and Mane, especially with that million as well?
It's a hard call, but I think I will stick to Salah mainly because he takes corners, he's on some free kicks, and he's also nailed on pens when Milner is not on the field. That 1 million, I think it's for that penalties, corners, and free kicks. I'll stay with him. Not having knee-jerk reactions.
No, absolutely. I like it. I like your thought processes in those transfers, and it's time to climb those ranks, my friend. Time to climb those ranks, and thank you for coming on this evening.
Thank you for having me on here.
No, you're more than welcome anytime. Speak soon, Ryan.
Bye.
We'll do one last caller. We'll have Phil come and join us in a moment. Sorry, Steve-O.
I was just going to say it's ended half-time 1-0 to Aston Villa. Of course, Wesley with the goal, Jota with the assist. Cy Bellamy, good friend of ours, just jokingly saying, but it's a bit of a promotional thing here. Cy just wants to win an Elite FPL mug. But Jason, can you tell the audience how they could, not only could they win an Elite FPL mug, but if they wanted one, how could they get one?
So right, I'm gonna put it out there now. If you want an Elite FPL mug, you win it by being top of the Community League. That's the Community League. The manager of the month of the Community League, starting from next month, not this month, will get an Elite FPL mug. The other way of doing it is keep an eye out on our website, and on our website you'll be able to purchase one. I've had enough people DMing me on Twitter and on Discord, so I'm making it all on the website. So give it a few weeks, let the website get all sorted out. You'll be able to order them through the website.
Brilliant. Okay, do you want to bring Phil on then, or Tornado Gangster?
Absolutely.
Only got a few minutes left.
Yeah, exactly. So hello, Phil. You're live on the Elite FPL podcast.
Evening, gents.
How are you doing, Phil?
Yeah, good. Bit annoyed about the Dania clean sheet slipping away, but
I feel you, bro. I feel you.
The question is, Phil, based on the history for Liverpool, did you captain Firmino? He's 90th in the league, Jason.
I don't have Firmino. I don't have any.
You've wild-carded. Wow, right, okay, here we go. Jason, let's see your reaction here. It's Nick Pope in goal. Dino, Wan-Bissaka, Pereira, De Bruyne, Sterling, Trossard, Son, captain, Barnes, Pookie and Rashford. Wow. You heard the history yesterday, Phil. Son has only started twice out of 5 games versus Newcastle, 3 sub appearances. It's one hell of a risk.
Phil, I don't know. Have you kind of got some sort of affection for despair? Because, like...
Right, firstly, the reason I've gone without a Liverpool defence is I don't see him keeping a clean sheet tomorrow against Arsenal. And possibly Burnley could give him trouble as well. So I'll be bringing back either Van Dijk or Trent for game week 5 for Pereira. Son, he played all the pre-season. He's literally just been sat there watching the last 2 games. I don't see no reason why he won't start. If he hauls, he's a massive, massive differential for me. I can see him getting 10, 12 points plus. Yeah. I'm compared to some of the other wild card teams that I've seen. I'm pretty happy.
You weren't interested in getting Mane in instead of Son then? No?
No.
Wow. I mean, it's bold going out without any Liverpool attackers. It's very bold. And, I mean, let's just hope that Son doesn't feature like for 15, 20 minutes. And
yeah, that would be a killer.
Yeah. I mean...
What is this? I want to know this obsession with Leicester's Pereira. What is made to choose him? And I've seen someone else, or maybe it was you that had him in the first place. What is this?
I just think he's a good attacking player for Leicester. He's one of their better assets. Seeing as Perez, I think the reason that Perez was so quiet in the first game was because of the amount of overlapping that Pereira was doing. And he gets the bonus points as well. So from them 3 defenders that I've got, obviously Dina's just let his clean sheet go, but all 3 of them could have got decent bonus this weekend.
I look at that team, and I don't see it being a threat to me. And that's just...
Can I just get this out here now? Everybody watching this, hashtag pray for Jason to have a bad game week. It's a very long hashtag, but the smirk on his face, he is loving life. That these people...
I will say that also. During this
Phil.
week, I've made $1 million this week as well. My squad's worth 99.8, and I've got 1.2 in the bank.
Oh, good. Notorious nerd. Hashtag Jason slaying wildcard, isn't it? Absolutely.
I'm just saying right now. I am just so relaxed. I'm just chilling. I'm just absolutely chilling. Me and Pookie right here, we're just chilling. And I mean, you guys can make these. I mean, bold moves. I mean, let's face it. I'm not gonna slate you. I mean, you're a great guy, and you've done something to try and you've done something. I can see what you've done. You've done it.
Clean sheets. Do you see Arsenal scoring this weekend?
Yes.
So technically, it's and especially with your team as well. You've got who's your Liverpool defender?
Van Dijk.
I'm just saying. So you've got Van Dijk, Salah, and Ceballos, man. So for Ceballos to do good, Van Dijk has to do bad. Yeah.
No, I know that, but I don't play for one game week.
No, nor do I. But for this week, I don't think Liverpool defenders.
And Van Dijk could easily score a header from a corner, and he's also a bonus point magnet, and he's also to me for the price point, Van Dijk is just an absolute gem.
Surely Liverpool have to win the game for Van Dijk to get the bonus.
Well, I don't know what I haven't got a crystal ball. I don't know what the score's going to be, but I do see Liverpool and Arsenal scoring that game, like I did say. But I mean, the way I look at it, and what I was about to say to you is, you're in a position where you need to try and catch points now. You're not going to do them. You're not going to do that with the same players that myself and other people in the top half of the Cash League have got. You're going to have to go a little bit sideways and move around a bit. You've gone with the Rashford pick. Not a lot of people got Rashford in. They've gone with the Martial. You've stuck with Trossard. You've got Son as your captain, for God's sake. It could pay off. It could easily pay off for you. I'm not saying that it's a bad team. I've just said I'm not feeling under threat, and that's just I don't think like some teams when I load teams up in the league, I think, oh my god, I'm worried here, but I'm not too worried. I hope the Son captaincy pays off because you've got Sterling there away at Bournemouth, and I think Man City are the most potent attack in the league. I think they have got literally almost no limit to the amount of goals that they can potentially score. It's ridiculous the talent they've got in their team, and I just for your sake, this is for your sake, not for mine. For your sake, I just hope that you don't drop any more by choosing Son as your captain.
I need that, and I need Liverpool and Man City to lose their clean sheets this week as well. I think that's important for me.
But just remember, Phil, we're all here for you on Sunday when it all goes wrong.
Yeah.
cheers, Jason. Appreciated, mate.
Cheers, Phil. Thank you for coming on. Really appreciate it.
Take care, lads. Have a good weekend.
And you, mate. And you. Speak soon. Speak soon, Phil. Cheers, buddy.
We've only got a few minutes left, Jason, so we may as well get on a Tornado Gangster. He's been waiting for a while, and then Sultan Saeed, and then we can then we can get going.
All right, cool.
Tornado Gangster, you are live with myself and Jason for this Rate My Team kind of special. How are you, mate? Tornado Gangster, you're live on the show with there he is.
Hello.
Hello,
the guy that breathes into his microphone. Welcome.
Wow, Jason's a bit aggressive, everybody, tonight.
Sorry.
Whereabouts are you in the Cash Mini League?
I'm doing. I don't have.
Oh, okay, fair enough. Are you confident ahead of Game Week 3? What did you do again? Remind the audience.
What did I completely forgot. It's blank. I brought in Son, Mount, and Pookie.
Son, Mount,
right, and Pookie. Who did you take out?
Perez and King.
Can you speak? Right, Can you speak slightly closer to your microphone because now you're too quiet. I'm really sorry.
Son for Fraser.
Yep.
Mount for Perez.
Yep.
And Pookie for King.
I like it.
Yeah, so do I.
Was that for -4? Was it?
-8.
I don't know if I like it for a -8, but I mean they're decent transfers. But I don't know why everyone in chat's saying down with Jason. God. Well, I mean, I'm sorry. Am I not allowed to be honest about people's team selections anymore?
No. We've already had people say we can't be honest. Not allowed to be that.
Yeah, it's a good team. It's a good team. Every team. It's a good team. It's a good team. It's a good team. It's a good team. I've got a script in front of me with Pookie on it. It's a good team. I mean, it's literally like, oh my god, woe betide. I may have a different opinion to someone else. Anyway, I'm chilling.
Yeah.
Sorry, Tornado Gangster. Go ahead and. So you've taken a -8. Taken a -8. Have you posted your team in the RMT channel?
Yeah, it is. It's not IMT.
Where are you?
Yeah. It's the most latest version. Latest message.
I've got it, mate. I've got it.
But the screenshot is old.
Yeah, it's fine. I've got
As
it.
you can see.
Yeah.
Cool. With the whole Digne yellow.
Yeah, I see. Yeah, I see that. So I mean, you got Van Dijk, Wan-Bissaka, Digne, Sayuncu. The name that Steve-O can't pronounce. We've got Son, Mount, Salah, captain, and De Bruyne, Pookie, and Kane. I think that team, apart from obviously.
What was that? Sorry, Salah captain.
Yes.
Salah captain.
Oh, that's good. What? Why? That's different. Good. Why have you gone with Salah? I was actually, and I'll be honest, I was 10 minutes away from changing my mind from Sterling to Salah. That's the truth. I actually thought to myself, you know what? I have this feeling that Salah may get a goal and assist in that game, and Sterling will only get a goal. But
like it's gonna be a goal first, and Salah at least minute 1, and maybe an assist.
No, I completely agree with you. No, I completely think that you've done the right moves. You've done it. You've gone for a differential captain.
Kane gives me a haul. I get his point. It doesn't get double points, but I get his points.
Yeah, you get his points. You don't get doubled. Yeah, I mean it's again, it's the Son pick with Kane. I hope it works out for you. I really do. It's a good fixture. Arguably, it's the best fixture. Home to Newcastle this season. Newcastle at 6s and 7s, and if Son comes back into that team, like like he did last year and starts firing on all cylinders. I mean, I know he's been suspended for the first 2 games. He won't be match fit. He won't be match fit. There's question marks on whether he will start the game. But if he does, then you're going to be smiling, I'm sure. But yeah, Lundstrom on the bench where he belongs. Thank you ever so much for joining us this evening. We're a bit pressed for time, so we'll speak to you soon, Tornado Gangster. And yeah, look forward to seeing you get on this weekend. We've got one more caller, Sultan Saeed. Sultan Saeed. You're now live on air. How are you doing this evening, Sultan?
Good evening. Yeah, I'm doing well, thank you. How about you guys?
Yeah, no, I'm chilling, mate. I'm chilling. No problems here. No problems here. Are you set for game week 3?
Game week 3. So you can bring up my team if you want. In the, I think I'm 32nd in the cash league.
Yeah,
okay.
Sure.
I mean, 2 free transfers this week. They're pretty boring. But,
do you want to tell us what they are, Sultan?
Yes, I take now King for Pookie to capitalise on the 0.2 price rise.
Yeah.
Because I think that could be important. And my other transfer was Robertson down to Wan-Bissaka.
So does that mean you've got money in the bank?
Yeah, so I have I think about 2 million now in the bank to play with.
1.9 in fact. So to clarify, you got Josh King in last week Saturday night?
No, I've had him in since game week 1.
So,
you've had
right. So I upgraded Wilson to Rashford this week because I feel that Rashford could do some real damage against Crystal Palace. Did you not consider doing something like that? I know you got Martial in your team.
I actually did, and something that I didn't think about was I had Greenwood. So since I brought in Wan-Bissaka and I already have Martial, that's 3 United spots. So I was actually considering a -4, but it's I literally. Because ready for 3 United players, yeah.
Of course, I'm sorry. Yeah, I just realised you got Greenwood there. No, that's a fair point. I mean, Wilson could do something potentially. I wouldn't be holding out on hope on that. But no, it's a nice 4-4-2, solid 4-4-2. It reminds me of my team. Actually, looking at that team, obviously, you've got the mighty Matt Ryan in goal. I think he's going to do well for you. I certainly hope so. Anyway, you got the same captain as me, Sterling. Yeah, I think I like that team. I think you're pretty set. You got any transfer plans for game week 4 and beyond, or you haven't used your wildcard yet, have you?
I haven't used any ships yet. No,
absolutely.
One of the reasons actually got that money in the bank was to consider KDB in, but like the thing is, I mean, I could do like Perez to KDB and then Wilson to Barnes, but yeah, I mean that is definitely an option. I mean, what would you think of that?
Perez to KDB, Wilson to Barnes. I know Stephen would probably nod his head there. I think if you can do anything to get KDB in, it would be a good move. I think I said it pre-season. I said it game week 1. I'll say it, continuing to say it all the way through probably the rest of the season. KDB is going to have an absolute stormer as long as he stays fit and doesn't get injured. I think he's going to be I hate the word essential, but I think he's going to be up there with the almost, you've got to have him in. I think that that would be depending on obviously how Perez does and what Wilson does with a City game. You may have to reconsider, but I just think any move to get KDB in that team is a good move. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think he could be like, you talked about the Holy Trinity last season with Alonso, Mendy, and who's the other one? Alonso Mendy, Robertson.
Robertson, yeah.
I think he could be a part of it with Sterling and maybe Salah if he starts showing some form again.
Oh yeah,
or
definitely.
Even Mane.
I mean, definitely. I mean, there's all eyes are going to be on Salah. Like, there's lots of Salah owners that have seen people transfer Salah to Mane, free up that 1 million. Obviously, Mane is going to go up in price. In fact, I'm tempted to just... Do you know what? I'll ask you a question while you're here. I'll ask the chat a question, because I mentioned it in Discord earlier on. Now, don't just go off on me, because it's not a certainty, okay? I'm considering going Salah to Mane this evening.
Because, is that this evening?
This evening, yeah. Because because Mane's going up in price tonight. Well, it's very likely.
Right, yeah.
Very likely that Mane's going up in price this evening. And I don't know. It's only 0.1, but I just don't like missing out.
I don't think it's worth it, to be honest. But
see what people think, because obviously I'll have a free transfer this evening. Let's get some thoughts in chat while we carry on chatting. Somebody's asking about the community team and about putting it up in the on the screen. Yeah, what about the community team, Steve-O? Talk us about the community team.
Yeah, so we took a couple of polls regarding which players you wanted to bring in for, well, basically for Fraser and Wesley. Yep, you got rid of Fraser. You got rid of Wesley, and you brought in Pookie and Martial.
Well done, guys.
And you decided to go and captain Sterling this particular game week. So yeah, it looks like it's already been a fail straight away with the Wesley move. But again, there's nothing you can do. Aston Villa playing a team which can't seem to concede goals, and all of a sudden, the one player you don't expect to score goes and scores against Everton. It's just pure karma, as they say. But yeah, the actual team is actually in the Rate My Team section, I believe, if anybody wants to check it. I certainly did. I'll post it up again in the Rate My Team if you want right now. But
yeah, please do. So.
Overall, I think you guys will be pretty happy with what the team is and everything and moving forward.
Getting some response right now from the guys in chat saying FPL Penguin says he likes it. What, you're insane, says Resi Desi. We got
just posted it now.
Ace Adventurer says no. Wait until the game is over, says Hicks 76 abs. I literally I know all this. Waste of a transfer, says Greasy Trumpet. I'm sticking with Salah, says Ian Anderson. Waste of a transfer. Some people have blooming wildcarded to do that transfer. We got why don't you just copy all my team, Jason? What am I getting? Well, I mean, if you're behind me, then
Jason, you're getting all the stick. It's normally me that gets all the stick, but tonight you're the one that's copying it. This is fantastic.
Just spitting harsh truths, my friend. Just spitting harsh truths. We got the fear of Mane is strong with this one, says Hicks. No. No one invited for the Wesley party. No, it doesn't seem so to be Notorious Nerd. We got I've done the Mane move. Do it now, says Peter Shuka. Good move, says Anurag. If in doubt, says Big Issues. What, make the transfer? Yeah. We got Salah's staying in my team. So I think Daily Llama's saying Salah's on pens and corners. Yeah, I know, but Mane, I just think Mane's the better. I don't know. I don't know. I like the look of Mane more at the moment. Notorious Nerd says loving the stream. Thank you ever so much. And if you are loving the stream, hit that subscribe button, just like Siam Karim just did. So Siam Karim, we are now approaching 2,000 subs, and remember, so if we get to 2,000, Steve-O's gonna down a bottle of vodka, aren't you, Steve?
Get it done, lads.
Well, we're going off air in a few seconds, so it doesn't look like we're going to do it. But also, as Jason did mention just now, if you are watching this live, just hit that like button. It just shows that's the most support you can give us, just hitting that like button, because clearly you're enjoying being here. We're getting on average about 150 people watching per show. I mean, so and Saeed, before we let you go, you've been here since virtually the beginning. It must be fantastic for you to see the growth of this particular channel.
Yeah. It's mind-blowing, really. 2K now, almost.
Yeah, I mean, you were there from the beginning when we only had basically you in the chat. And
maybe 250 subs or something.
Yeah.
So it's nearly gone up 1,000% since then, hasn't it? Well, nearly, I guess. But
absolutely, yeah. I think that ends it there, Jason. Really, we only wanted to make.
Oh, did I hit the ice cream tune? I think I may have missed.
Oh, did you?
I hit the ice cream.
That's going to come.
I hit the ice cream van tune. Sorry, I need to get rid of that. I'm sorry, guys. I'm sorry about that, guys. It's been great to have you on the show, everybody, and thank you for the support. Can't wait to watch the second half of this exciting Aston Villa Everton game. I swear I'm going to lose my schnizzle if Digne gets a last minute assist or goal. Steve, are you going to say something?
Yes, I'll do it. Shall I just close the show with our old admin, or have you got any final thoughts before we leave?
Check out the website. check out the website, guys. I've been working on it until like 2 a.m. some evenings, and
if you can bring it up, Jason.
I'll do it next stream. I'll get it all set up. I'll get it all ready next stream. I'll just check it out, elitefpl.com.
Yeah.
Let us know your thoughts. Come into Discord. If you're not already in Discord, join our Discord channel, !Discord in chat, and let me know a bit of feedback. Let me know what you'd like to see on the website, what you feel you don't want to see on the website. There's not going to be any adverts on there, don't worry. It's just going to be a host to our all of our video archives are going to be on there. SoundCloud. Oh, by the way, I uploaded a few of the SoundCloud podcasts because I know I got a bit behind on those. It's host to our SoundCloud content, and if you want to listen to it back, and I'm hoping to have a live league on there at some point, a live league of our cash league and a live league, community league. I'm speaking to a few people that possibly can do that for us, and any other things that you'd like to see on there. Just like I said, hit me up in Discord. Let me know. Give me some feedback. Okay, Steve.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. And as ever, I've just got some exclusive news for everybody. Listen to this. So, what's it going to be? Myself and Jason, just before we came live on there, we decided that we're going to do a live stream tomorrow before the Arsenal-Liverpool game kickoff. So at 5 p.m, get this in your diary, everybody. 5 p.m. tomorrow evening. Myself and Jason not only are going to be reacting live to what happened at the 3 p.m. kickoffs and, of course, the 12:30 game between Norwich and Chelsea, we are going to be going live before the Liverpool-Arsenal game and then probably streaming throughout it. I see people are messaging why we don't stream to the end of this game because we only wanted to do this for an hour. We've already gone over an hour, so we don't want to go any longer than that. Other than that, let's get on with the admin, shall we? As ever, if you've enjoyed the stream, just simply hit that like button. Really, really does show your support for us and everybody that watches this. If you haven't subscribed but you enjoy our content, just simply hit that subscribe button. Follow us on social media at Elite FPL on both platforms of Twitter and Instagram. Just to let everybody know, your social media assistant, who is Dan Ball, our former co-host, is now running our Instagram page. So anybody that does follow us on Instagram, anything that's posted up through that is all done through Dan, and we are very grateful for him to do that. As Jason's just mentioned, if you want to get live on air, simply join the Discord group. I'm sure Daily Llama, FPL Booner that are in chat now will post up the link. If the link isn't posted, the link is in the description of this particular video, and you'll be able to join us and you'll be able to speak with lots and lots of light-hearted FPL managers that want to talk all things fantasy football and help you through your transfers. Like Jason just said, just visit the website elitefpl.com. It's a wonderful site. I saw it yesterday and it's absolutely superb. Other than that, Jason, I'm done for the evening. Any final thoughts before we go? That's a no then. Let's cut it. Let's go.
I'm sorry that I played the ice cream tune twice. I apologise. See you now. Bye.
Just of interest, whereabouts are you? Not in the world, but are you near like an industrial machine or something? It's very 2 seconds. Just ask a couple of questions. I just need to get the door for a second.
No problem,
this is what happens when you're live.
What's going on? Not a lot really. I'm waiting to go to gym. What about yourself?
There's just so many ideas.
So many ideas, so many different perspectives. I blame Brett Mollison for his 5 at back, because when you see my new team,
wow.
Brighton home, they couldn't buy a goal in the last season.
Well, I don't know. Dan's got Glenn Murray. I think he'll have a word to say about that.
I'm detecting possibly a German accent. I'm probably completely way out. But where are you calling us from?
South Africa.
On the first day, I literally just typed in FPL, like first draft, and yours came up like first. So I thought, I'll watch one of the live streams when it comes on. And then I thought, this is a bit long, isn't it? About 2 hours in. And then 3 hours later, well, an hour later, I was like, yeah, these seem alright, you know. Steven's not that bad.
I have one question for you. I want you to predict the order of the Elite FPL ranking. So, like, who do you think will finish first, second, and third out of y'all three this season?
So it's certainly no disrespect to Dan, but it's certainly going to be between me and Jason and right now, as it stands, I'd go with Jason because my history suggests that I'm going to be having a bad season.
So I've got the 5 at the back. I just see a lot of value there. I feel like if I don't have Salah, I can spread the money elsewhere and maybe get the points another way.
All the teams now, except for obviously Salah and Sterling, these players, a lot of players are going to change towards the start of the season just because of new transfers, injuries that could happen, and all of that. So for me to tell you now, like personally right now, I'd say definitely if Tammy Abraham or Batshuayi are cheap, I'd get one of them just because I don't care about the Man United. We can score against them at least 2 or 3.
Hey guys, this season we're using Discord. It's a text and voice application where you can talk all things FPL with fellow community members. You can post your team in the Rate My Team, talk in the general chat, you can look at transfer news, look at awesome GIFs, sign up for our Cash Mini League, look at our previous podcasts, and even join us live on air in one of our streams. We look forward to seeing you guys. Link is in the description, or look at the code on screen.